Are we live, do you think, Nancy?
Oh, we are
I
live.
think so. So a big welcome to everyone that's joining us on Facebook Live. My name is Helen Torres. I'm the Executive Director of HOPE, Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, and I am joined by a new friend. We have become good friends over this COVID-19 time period. One of my fellow warriors in the cause for social justice in our communities, Nancy Gapp, who is the Executive Director for the Center for Asian Americans United for Self-Empowerment. Welcome, Nancy. It's good to see you. Good to talk again.
Hi, thank you for having me. I always enjoy our conversations, and it's true. It's interesting. Some of the outcomes of COVID also include new relationships like ours. So I just feel lucky to do the work with you.
It's a pleasure to do the work with you. One of the things, Nancy, that HOPE really found important to do was after last year in 2020, especially during the summer where we saw so much violence against African Americans, Asian Americans in our communities, and of course the ongoing discrimination against all our communities, was to partner with Cause and the Urban League of Los Angeles and do a couple of polls. I know our conversation today is really going to be centered around the work that you do. So I'd love to just, as we kicked up our campaign, Hope Against Racism, one of the things that we really felt was to really expand how we see who is being discriminated, who is feeling racism in our communities. And I just love to learn a little bit about how our work together has influenced you. But even before we get to that, Nancy, just share a little bit about who you are and how you've come to this space.
Sure. So I think it's actually meaningful to me to start with the poll survey and the partnership, actually. I actually came to Cause in the end of July, so it was during the pandemic. Our work is around civic engagement and political empowerment for the Asian and Pacific Islander community. And some of our programs, I think, also reach similar audiences just in the Asian and Pacific Islander community. So we also have a leadership institute and a college student academy where we're encouraging folks to get involved. We know that sometimes that looks like running for office, but also it's about planting that seed of what civic engagement looks like. And so I know that's what drew me to Cause. I also have been involved in the community, in the Asian and Pacific Islander community nationally for a long time. And so becoming more local and joining an organization that was taking a look at race relations in California was really important to me. I had seen the impact that COVID-19 was having on our communities across the board in so many different ways. And to know not only that the poll survey data was happening, but that there was also a conversation before COVID that the three organizations had to work together to see where we were at. What does race relations look like in California? And then realizing it was important for us to keep tracking it during this time. And so for me, that was really key, that it was important to think about how our communities collaborate, what each of us are experiencing and how that feels. And so I know that for me, it was part of the reason I was actually drawn to Cause as well as this partnership. I think it's an important thing for all of our communities. And so always eager to do things with hope for that reason.
Absolutely. And we learned so much from each other. I learned a lot from you, Nancy, how poised you are, how your different ways of approaching a problem in a conversation. So I'm very grateful to you. Share a little bit, Nancy, about coming to this space right now when we're really facing social injustice and really lifting up the voice of Asian Americans in Pacific Islanders during a time where traditionally, and I wouldn't say traditionally, because we've all faced racism and discrimination, all our communities have since the founding of this country in one way or another, right? And it is it's another global pandemic, that's for sure. But I'd love to learn a little bit about how you shape the work that you're doing. Both of us talk about, how do we shape the work because we're women leaders in this space. What is the perspective that you bring to lift up currently what's happening among our communities? And how do you think from a gender lens that makes a difference?
Sure. I've been thinking a lot about intersectionality and how intersectionality informs the way we talk to each other. Sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to represent something, some one thing, or that my hurt or my anger needs to be represented quickly. I actually believe, and I think this again was because we were doing so many things together, right after some of the violence that happened in Atlanta with the shootings, I saw so many women in our community, women leaders in our community, just feel like they need to do something immediately and not take that time to really root in what they needed to heal in order to lead. Um, I actually felt like I was experiencing it and not naming it, and being on a call with another woman leader made me think differently about asking for the space. I think it matters when we see each other. It matters also what helps us feel brave about what we say in spaces. And I know that mattered to me in that moment where we were on a call with a lot of other men, and I didn't feel like it would show weakness to say it, partly because I knew I had someone in the room who had my back. And so I think a lot about right now and all of the different roles we play in our personal and in our professional lives, and how that intersection of grayness is coming out in every aspect of trying to manage and also grieve for all the things that are changing and our losses from COVID-19. And I would say a realization for the Asian and Pacific Islander community that we've been scapegoated again, right? Like this anti-Asian hate moment. It's not about it being new, you're right, but it's like yet again during this really difficult time, we're being targeted once more. And so just reminding myself not only to take a breath, but to model what it looks like so that when other women of color who are leading are in a space with me, they can have that feeling too, that they can say something and someone has their back.
That modeling is so important. Obviously, both of us run leadership programs. I know when I show up in that leadership space, when I'm the trainer of that program, I try to keep that in the front and center of how am I modeling the the behaviors, one, to be authentic, but also the behaviors and actions that I want to see as me showing up as a leader, right? I want to be authentic, I want to be approachable, and but I also want to have that warrior spirit, a spirit at the same time. What's your balance when you think about all that you're trying to bring to the table? What's your approach to balance, and what are you trying to balance?
Sure. First of all, if that's what you're trying to do, it's working. So that's really great.
Oh, thank you.
And I say that, I think that also, admittedly, we just wrapped up a student program and I learned a lot from watching them interact. One of their rules was actually there were no apologies. And that no apologies in a way that wasn't acknowledging when we did something wrong. I think the acknowledgement and openness to learn is so important. Um, but then also in a group, it was actually all young women. It was so surprising how often we said, sorry, I didn't do this, sorry, I didn't do that, sorry, I had to work, right? Like these like very real truths for us that we're apologizing for. And I think for me, I learned so much just from being in the room with them, that we're allowed to have a lot of things happening in our lives. We're allowed to do these things and not feel like we need to apologize for the many things that we're trying to do it together. So I think about that a lot as I balance all the different things I want to be in a space, and not apologize, but also be transparent because someone's watching me. If people are looking at me and how I lead, then I want to model what I want to see. I don't want to model what I've been told is how I'm supposed to be. And so what does it look like for me personally? And oftentimes I overshare. I think it's important from a vulnerability standpoint, and I have been criticized for it. So I'm learning to communicate that a little bit better, but I'm not sorry that I do it. I think it's important for other people, other women, to hear how I think through these leadership moments and recognize when I could have done it a little bit better. there's nothing embarrassing about that. And so I think just about how I can bring people on that journey with me as I learn it, but also that doesn't mean I'm not confident about it, and that those things can happen at the same time.
No, absolutely. I know one of the things that I try to be transparent on, and I have learned not to apologize, is that I'm a working mom, a full-time working mom with teenage boys, twins at home. So make people, I give them the heads up that, hey, this is what is occurring in my life, so that they can take that into account, but not to an account for an excuse, but more of an understanding of the environment in which I'm operating in. And I embrace it. I love being a mom. I worked really hard to get to this place to be a mom. So I embrace that. So I think balance and transparency without apology is so important in leaders. And as both of us have programs that are focused on young women, and well, in your case, women and men, and us in Latinas, it's really important to show a variety of different models of leadership as well, as they're developing their own. And I think that embracing the leaders that they're trying to be is also really important, as opposed to trying to make them fit into a box of what we think is needed, right? And really kind of allow them to lead us as well is really important. Um, it's very interesting. You and I have talked about this in the past, that both of our communities, when we're under these big umbrellas of terminologies of Latino or Hispanic or Asian Pacific Islander, I mean, that encompasses so many different cultures, and so many individuals from different countries with interesting histories with those countries within themselves, right? But when we get here to the United States, and and some of us have, some of our cultures have been part of the United States from the very beginning. It really does lend itself to have that conversation of how we're coming together as communities. I would love to learn a little bit, Nancy, about how do you bring your various different communities and cultures under this bigger umbrella of Asian American Pacific Islander?
Sure. I think it's so interesting too, because we're also battling a stereotype that we're one thing, right? We're just
Right.
one kind of thing. We're only one country. I think oftentimes even those of us in it are unsure what categories we're in, because we're not categorized like this anywhere else. And I say that from an Asian and Pacific Islander lens. I think there was a lot of very strategic, purposeful work done to bring our community together, but we're ultimately a coalition, a coalition that is constantly in negotiation in multiple languages. Depending on who's in the room is what that will look like. I think and I see those similarities in some other communities, and I think also as we see increase in immigrants in all of our communities, or from different places, how do we make sure that there's still inclusivity there? And then how do we renegotiate that coalition, right? And so I've been thinking about it a lot, because our community is talked to like we don't show up, or that we're not building that, but we are constantly talking about coalition inside our community, trying to find what's right. But it's why we have such regional differences. It's why we have such different ways of communicating, and also such a diverse political perspective as well. There's just a lot involved in it. I think that's something a lot of our communities are also combating when we combat stereotypes. And so I think for me, it's really rooting it in who I am and the history of who I am. My family is Chinese, Filipino, so they immigrated from China to the Philippines, and then from the Philippines to the United States. When we're talking about war, colonialism, occupation, my parents have their histories are full of all of it. And I think a lot of our histories are. And I think about the similarities of colonization, and all of the Spanish words in the Tagalog language, and how our foods sort of are similar but not the same, like that these nuances of what it looked like for colonialism to exist for us And then putting that in a context of Asian and Pacific Islanders, this whole other universe, because also Filipinos are actually considered Southeast Asian, not Pacific Islanders. But for Filipinos, Asian is Chinese, right? Like, so it's just sort of this very interesting moment of how we identify. And I think all of that together, it's just important for us to talk it out. And it might have to happen over and over again. But I think that it's valuable as we continue to build coalition together, that we're friends, and knowing your friends and their history is part of the work.
You know, I love how you said about we're a coalition that's in constant negotiation. I have never heard it paraphrased so eloquently before. I think that I'm gonna borrow that from you in the future. But it is interesting. I know myself, being of Puerto Rican descent, actually being born in Puerto Rico, but being raised in the Midwest, coming to Los Angeles was, you know, its own culture shock. But I think one of the key reasons this umbrella under Latino or Hispanic or Latinx is so important is that externally no one else sees that, right? They just see us as Latino, or in my case, I was always identified as Mexican American, which I embraced. I was like, okay, but it wasn't who I was as a Puerto Rican, right? So I think it's important that not only are we in negotiation with our own coalition, understanding that there's an external viewpoint of who we are, and trying to correct that, trying to correct the stereotypes, but and coming together in coalition is so important to help do that. Part of that is, I know I'm constantly trying to educate myself about not only my different types of individuals who identify as Latino, and being very gracious of trying to take in all that information and providing that platform, if you will. But I need to educate myself about other communities as well. What advice do you have, or what do you do about educating yourself about the various different viewpoints that are part of our communities, the different individuals that make it up? How do you go about doing that work?
Sure. I think some of it is about knowing how you learn. I used to think, I used to love books. I read a lot of books, but I realized I don't really learn a lot by reading. It's kind of a funny challenge. I very much learn from stories and from people, and knowing that about myself has really helped me to seek that out, to just ask questions and be curious. But I would say that for me, it all begins with two things. One is I think about inclusivity and diversity in a way that's like, I don't want to name that, oh, we're not at this table and someone is missing. Who are they? Or like, oh, I feel like we need to be represented. I think what I want is for me to that feeling of being missed at a party, right? Like, my friends aren't here. Why aren't my friends here? Why would I have a party without my friends, right? Like, and I think that kind of conversation about being at the table and being in those conversations is that we're not being missed even. And that is a problem. It's not about only that we're not represented. It's that there is comfort in not having us there. And how do we change that? And I thought about that in the context of also like, so what do I want to do about it? And I realized I just start showing up at other things. You know, and I think I do it intentionally, but also I was in artist management for a long time. And, you know, if you want people to come to your events, you got to go to other people's events. But you also have to think about like, who do I want at this event? Where are the people who are my people? Like, I still want to have a good time. And so I think about that too, like, where are the community events that I want to go to, where I want to build, because I enjoy it, because I enjoy the content, because there's something that draws me and connects me there. And it's amazing what you can find when you just show up where you want to show up with no expectation. You don't have to give me anything because I showed up. I just wanted to be here. And I think that's meaningful.
I love that. It really does resonate with me, because I was one of those high school kids that was always worried that if people were going to show up to their parties or wasn't going to be invited. So what you're saying really resonates with me. I think it is important, and this is what I love about our coalition and how we've been working together, is to show up for each other and to be of support with each other. And it's moving conversations and relationships from being transactional to really transformational. And when we get to, to that piece of transformational relationships, when we feel we're all in it together, to either right a wrong or to create a new solution or to work together on various different projects, that's where you do miss that person not being with you, right? And we're not just a box that you're checking off in some kind of meeting of like, okay, who's represented here, but really truly saying, I'm missing voices because I truly, to your point, miss those individuals, those perspectives at the table. But it does take some people to form that habit, right? And to get out of their own, quote unquote box, to reach out to others that don't fit whatever world that their view of the world. And I think that's always a struggle, especially in communities like in Los Angeles and other areas. We're really segregated. And so you have to be purposeful. And that's what I'm taking away from what you're speaking. Talk a little bit about your approach to leadership training. I know we only have a few minutes left, but if you could just say, at the end of the day, causes, developing leaders for what purpose, for what cause?
Sure. I think my approach, and I hope that it matches Cause's long-term vision in itself. I say that hope because I think we all talk about it different, right? And so for me, leadership training is about dispelling that myth that there's this barrier to you being whatever you want to be. In our communities, we don't see people in those spaces. We don't know anybody who's been an elected official, or we don't know anyone who's worked in an office. There are just so many variations of access, not even just language, but network. And so in what ways can our leadership training not just provide skills and both hard and soft skills, but also access to just someone else who's done it, access to that kind of envisioning of what is possible, but also I think related to showing up for people at their parties, is about, again, who has your back. I think it's very much a theme for me, even in leadership training, is that I do want folks to take away important information. I do think there's a lot of information that's available to people now. And so what the thing we can bring is the Asian and Pacific Islander lens in conversations that you don't have an opportunity to talk about race with other people sometimes. And the value of that is that we do need to practice. We need to practice talking about those things so we can advocate for our communities, and so that we can also find the things that we're passionate about and how to talk about them. I think if we can give that to our participants, the rest will come. The opportunities to lead will show up because we're advocating for that too. And when they do, I want a group of people who want it and want to take that step. And how do we create that? How do we create that that lane that makes it feel good to take that leadership position? Not that feeling like, well, no one else will do it. Not that feeling like being voluntold, right? Like, how do we make it so that folks feel ready and they just are like, I'm going to do this because I feel like I have a network of people who will show up for me. Again, I think it was interesting how I learned that too. Like when I was doing artist management, I was representing some hip hop artists, and I used to go to all kinds of places by myself as a young woman in Los Angeles, new to the city. But I always felt safe because the network they had treated them like family, and everywhere I went, I was protected because I was their family. And I think about that when we think about community advocacy, when we think about how we show up in spaces, is how can I make you feel safe in where my family is, right? And I think that some of our leadership training is really creating that family, so that as you continue on your journey, you have that.
I think that's so important. I'm always amazed with our Hope Leadership Institute program for adult women advancing their civic engagement, how quickly within less than the first session, a couple of days into it, these women really bond and start developing that network that often resembles a family. And it's incredible to me, and it came to my mind that they don't get this out in their workplace, or in their traditional areas of which they're advocating about, where they walk into a room that has a majority of individuals that have had their same life story and life experiences, and then how they come together to discuss community issues and not always come in an agreement with solutions, but come to an agreement of respect and working towards something bigger. It's one of the most rewarding parts of the job, is to see that aha moment being fulfilled in someone, that they're stepping into that leadership space, to your point, because they choose to. And for us, oftentimes with Latinas, is to see them finally realize their highest potential, and remove any barriers that they're putting in their own minds about their leadership, which is incredible. So much of it is just demystifying the process. Democracy is really interesting. It's really messy, and sometimes it's designed that way to keep sometimes people out. But I think that's why it's so important to have programs like ours. So Nancy, we're wrapping up here. It's Asian American Pacific Islander Month celebration. Anything that you really want to share with our Facebook audience that you want to leave us with, some thoughts?
Sure. I think it's related to what you were saying about that rewarding moment. I would say that investing in yourself and exploring what that means for you, like what you're ready for. Something that I actually was surprised was very rewarding for me was that I was running a nonprofit staff program, prepping people to be EDs. And oftentimes people would say, oh, I know all this content. When are we going to do more? And I would be like, actually, you're pretty ready. Like, you're ready. And you came here thinking you weren't ready. So what we're telling you is you're ready. If you showed up and you know everything that's going on, you're ready. Like, so I don't know what else you need from me. And now you even have the network for it. So I would say leadership development is a lot of things. I'm a big advocate for it because it also helps you know what you know. And so I would really encourage people to invest in yourself, and also to think about the spaces where you can explore your identity to be stronger. And I think that's what all our heritage months are about, is like exploring our identities so we can celebrate them and be stronger.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for your time. I know two things. One, I'm a better person for knowing you and getting to learn from you. So thank you so much for that and your friendship. And our coalition is one of the highlights of the work that we're doing at Hope. So I look forward to continuing to learn from you for the advancement of our coalition. And just want to welcome your advice at all times. You know, you have an open door with me, and vice versa, I hope. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and for that invitation. I'm going to take you up on that open door as well. So
Absolutely. Thank you. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon.